If you do have any rum at home and you don't have the tasting set, if you want to grab up a Bajan rum, a Jamaican, and if you have any Guyana, and of course, Black Tot, I'm very on brand today. Please go ahead and grab it and you can taste along with us because me and Mitch will need to have a drink halfway through this, I'm sure. So Mitch, welcome and great to have you on board. Love to know a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know you're a massive fan of the Tiger King, so that's, 1 point in your favor. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of what you've been doing and how you got into rum?
Thanks, Dawn. Hey, how are you? And hi, everyone. I hope everyone's having a nice time at home. Yes, funny enough, you mentioned Tiger King. Someone sent me this thing yesterday, and I don't know, I'm not sure where it came from, or I guess it's like one of these things, but I kept it just in case Tiger King came up today. We will delve into the depths that is the mystery behind Carol Baskin later, I'm sure. But yeah, look, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me on Whisky Exchange. Yeah, it's been a fun experience, sort of learning more and more about the history and getting behind the sort of secrets, I guess, in Navy rum, and a lot of the stuff that's been, I guess there's a lot of myths and a lot of different parts. And my rum journey, I guess, from here has sort of dotted me around the world a little bit. So I started in London. I was very fortunate to be a barback at Trailer Happiness in London, which to this day is my favorite rum bar in the world.
Big shout out to Sly and the boys.
Yes, so Sly and Paul, and at the time Jim Wrigley was the bar manager there with Audrey Hands and Will Pineapple. So it was a wicked little team when I started, and it was something that really kind of opened my eyes to rum, because before that I'd never grown up with rum. I had no idea what rum was really. Coming from Essex, where I did, probably the fanciest drink we would have would be like a Smirnoff Ice Black, if you're really,
You weren't into Buckfast? Buckfast is very popular at the moment.
Well, yeah, it would be years before I discovered the joy of Buckfast on a crazy night in Edinburgh. But yeah, so Trailer really opened my eyes up to rum. I remember my first shift there was doing a stock take with Jim Wrigley, and he was reading off all these bottles from different islands and countries and brands that I'd never seen before, and a lot that I haven't seen since, and all these amazing bottles of rum. And it kind of just fascinated me. And I think also there's a magic to rum. There's something about going to a rum bar that you don't get that experience anywhere else. Like they've stopped it now, unfortunately. But back in the day at Trailer, if the room was too quiet and they needed the crowd to jump up, and on a Friday, Saturday night, the bartender would just grab a bottle of Wray and Nephew 63% white overproof Jamaican rum, give himself a layback, pour some on his hand, set his hand on fire, shoot this fireball, breathe this fireball over this 8-meter copper roof. The whole room would turn around and be like, what the hell is happening? And it was definitely illegal. But, it got the whole room jumping. It got everyone going. And you never see that in a whiskey bar, do you? You never see the bartender in, the nice suspended waistcoat. Oh, excuse me, sir, I'm just going to breathe out some fire with this cast strength whiskey over here. It's a completely different experience. And that kind of captured my imagination. I always remembered that, going to different bars and everywhere I worked, like wherever there was rum, there was this sense of, being more relaxed and tropical and having more fun with the drinks. It's always stayed with me, and it's been fun to turn that into my career now. So, and
I think I've had the same experience. I only just got into rum probably really two years ago, and I think it's, for me, rum is liquid sunshine, and the people in it are all about sort of joy and life and laughter, and there's so much color in rum. And I love whiskey, but there is just something a little bit different. And I think you're right. It's that sort of joie de vivre. It's that kind of energy that comes from sugar, which of course is the basis of life and rum. I think I'm always asked this, and I think it's a really interesting question. Can you remember what was the first rum that you thought, holy shit, this is where I want to be? Sorry, am I allowed to swear on Facebook? Is that me?
I hope so, because I definitely will. So we'll just go down together. So what's the question? Sorry, the first rum that
really you thought that, you know, I remember the rum that really turned me onto rum. Can you remember your kind of your light bulb moment, as it were?
I suppose, I guess there's a couple of moments, like the Ray and Nephew sticks in my mind because it was such a visual representation of how fun rum was, especially when it's on fire. I'd say probably the first rum that got me interested in learning a bit more and starting to understand, you know, production and place methods was Santa Teresa, actually, because Jim Wrigley, who was my mentor back in the day, used to be the global ambassador for Santa Teresa. And, you know, it was very much a staple in any bar we worked at together. So that was one of the first rums that I really became interested in and really enjoyed, especially like their 1796. Barbados 5 by Plantation was always like, it was like, we called it breakfast rum, you know, it was just day in, day out. It was such an easy drink. It was such
You've always got to have a breakfast drink.
Absolutely, you know, so that was a rum that became a real staple for me over the last few years. And yeah, I don't know, this is, I guess, what's so fascinating and so exciting about rum is that you've got so many different moments, so many different styles, so many different, you know, experiences that you have with it. And some of them, like some of the best rum drinks I've ever had, or the ones that are most memorable, were the worst rum drinks I've ever had. You know, they were on a beach in Barbados at this tiki bar that, you know, everything was like, if you paid, you know, in that for that cocktail in London, you'd be like, what is this? Well, we're never drinking here again. But there's something about that setting on the beach in Barbados and just everything they're throwing into it, and you're like, this is amazing. This is exactly what a pina colada should taste like. So.
But this is exactly why people come back from vacation with terrible wine, because they're like, oh, it's so nice, this rosé is so pretty. And then they get back and they realize it's shit. Yeah. But I think you're right. You know, it's the memories, it's the people, it's everything that sort of combines to make a great drink. And I think that's what's so important, is to always keep in your head, you know, like when we have our great drink experiences, it's not just the physical liquid, it's everything that surrounds it. So talking of physical liquid, Mitch, you know, like if we look at kind of something like Black Tot, and the history, you know, I think a lot of people are talking a lot about at the moment sort of single origin rums, and very much that kind of the trend at the moment is to look at those sort of single origins, like people like Foursquare Plantation with their sort of Barbadian stuff, and Hamden and things like that. So, but I think the art of blending is always very important, and is something that, you know, for our whiskey audience out there has always been important. But I think, you know, the history of rum is so interesting. I mean, how do you see the sort of revolution of this sort of, is blended rum going to come back as a revolution? What's your take?
Yes.
Okay, move on to the next conversation. Next. Up and you shut it down.
I was watching Richard Seal last week, so, you know, I just yes. I think it is interesting. Like, rum has a heritage with blending that no other spirit in the world has, and I don't think that's just
coming after you, Mitch.
Yeah, but let me explain the context of that. So, like with a whiskey, for example, okay, like, yes, that we have whiskey blends and we have single malts, but it's a very different connotation. You know, no one really in the whiskey world, certainly in any big way or any traditional standpoint, is saying, let's take a little bit of smooth Irish whiskey, mix it with a little bit of smoky Islay, peaty whiskey, and a touch of bourbon for sweetness. You know, let's take these three countries and blend these three flavors together and create something bigger than the sum of its parts. You know, no one's going with gin. Oh, let's take an English gin, a French gin, an Australian gin, and put those three together.
They all taste the same, Mitch.
Exactly. You know, it's like no one's going with vodka. No one's going, oh, let's take this flavorless vodka with this flavorless vodka and this and blend. No, it's still the same. But rum has something to it where, you know, and because of its history and because of the way rum was set up, where it's very common to say, you know, let's take this tropical, balanced, fruity Bajan style rum. Let's mix it with a little high ester, funky Jamaican rum. Maybe use some smoother style Trinidad rum as a base, or if you really wanted to throw a little accent in there, you know, blend some agricole or clarin in there as well to give it a little funk and a little grassy note, you know. And that in rum would be normal. That would be standard, you know. As bartenders, we think back to those rum blending traditions as being Don the Beachcomber, Trader Vic, you know, these guys who are the pioneers of the tiki drink movement. But really it was happening for the last 200 years, you know, when the Navy were first bringing back barrels of rum and they were blending it, and you had the London dock rums and you had the Navy rum blends going, you know. It wasn't, I believe, or from what I understand from everything I've read, I don't believe there was some master blender going, go and find me all the finest rums in the world and I shall create the world's best rum blend. You know, we're in a luxury position to be able to do that now. But back in the day, it was just, it made sense. Those were the trade routes. You know, we're going to the Caribbean, we're getting this liquid which can only be made there because of the raw material. We can't make that the same way here. You get that rum, you bring it back, we blend it together, and it was just more of a melting pot. Like, let's put everything together because it's a far easier way to consolidate, and it's a far easier way to tax everyone as well. So it's that's
always very important with our government.
That's all right. So yeah, so things like that, like just pure logistics of it, changed the way that rum was forever treated. You know, the way these rum blends were created, the way they all came together in London, London especially, and still that tradition happens today. You know, like you've got Sheer in Amsterdam and Liverpool with their main rum branch, and they essentially are the brokers for the Caribbean. They pull everything in together, and without them, you know, so many rums wouldn't even exist today. And so that we've got the history for this. We're accustomed to blending these different flavors together in these different countries together in a way that you just don't see with any other spirit.
And I think with any other liquid, actually, if I think about it, you know, even in wine, single origin is predominant. Yeah, you blend grapes, you blend whatever, you know, I always bring it back to wine because of course that's my first love. But yeah, I think you're right. And you don't often think about it, that sense of kind of a global melting pot with rum is much more sort of ingrained in the history. And I mean, is it almost, you think, that holy trinity of the islands, if we look at Trinidad, Barbados and Jamaica were the original, or were people blending outside of those countries? Like, I mean, we have Guyana here. So was it just that holy trinity, or was it more they were blending due to whether they were Dutch colonizers or Spanish colonizers? I mean, was that the origins of it, or was it much more laissez-faire and just where they landed and they bought and what have you?
I think it was a combination, you know. For Navy rum especially, this is, I guess there's so many different angles we can take on this, but if we look at Navy rum as an example, you know, everyone these days, if we said, what's a classic Navy rum blend? They'd say, you know, Trinidad, Guyana, Barbados, Jamaica, maybe Trinidad, Guyana, Barbados, maybe just Trinidad, Guyana, maybe just Guyana, maybe like, you know, really, you can sort of stretch that term of Navy rum to many different places. But really, you know, if we go back and we look at the records, a good friend of mine, Matt Petrek, who writes the great blog cocktailwonk.com, which is awesome. If you haven't read it, go and read all his stuff. He's amazing and one of the best rum writers in the world right now. And he's been researching all the background and where all the rum came from for the Navy rum blend, and was there, you know, was it just Barbados? Was it just this? Like, what was the predominant thing? And we do know that, you know, obviously for the British Navy, it made sense to go to British ports. So yes, Trinidad, Guyana, Barbados, they were staples because they were our home turf. Why wouldn't you pull those in? Jamaica was traditionally part of that blend, but it was actually too funky and too intense for the Navy. So they actually wrote to say no more Jamaica in the blend.
Oh, really?
So that sort of gets phased out over time as the blend continues. But then Matt also found records of there being rum in there from Indonesia, from Martinique, from Cuba. So there's like pretty much every rum around the world. If you couldn't get enough rum from your home base, you would go and get it from somewhere else and you pull that in. And, you know, I think, you know, for a long time, it really was a bit of a mishmash, but people were starting to understand, you know, like with the Jamaica, this gives a certain flavor that no other rum does. We need to, you know, take the blend this way or that way. So they were conscious of flavor, even if there wasn't a sort of set recipe as such.
And I think, you know, we're talking about flavor, and I'm getting thirsty, Mitch. Don't know about you. Yeah, it's been a long day.
Should we test the rum?
Yeah, I need some rum, Mitch.
We test the rum. We test the rum. So some of you guys, I know we had some sort of like these little tasting packs that we've done up. So you've got like little bottles with all the rums in.
Perfect measures. I'll put one up there so we can see.
And these are going, we've had 2 go to New Zealand, which I'm pretty sure are going to take a while to get there with everything going on right now. We've got some going to Germany. We've got a couple in the UK. So if you don't have your packs yet, don't worry. Like we'll be doing Black Tot tastings every week, and obviously today is going to be a bit of a chat anyway. But grab a pack and go on.
We're pimping you out, Mitch.
Yeah, do it. Like it's going to be fun, but the purpose of these and why we wanted to do these, because obviously like we could just say, just get a bottle of Black Tot and do that. My goal, my mission with Black Tot, if you like, is to try and get under the hood a little bit more with blends in rum. So one of the things that's always not annoyed me, hasn't really bugged me that much, but I always thought was a bit weird and a bit sus, was like when a brand goes, oh, it's a secret recipe. We can't tell you which of these mysterious Caribbean islands this comes from. It's like, you definitely can. You definitely know where you bought them from. Like come on, just tell me what's in it, you know? Oh no, it's secret Caribbean. Like, no, it isn't. So what we want to do with Black Tot is kind of get under the hood a bit more and be like, no, rather than pretend what it is and give you some marketing spiel, it's like, no, let's actually taste all the rums. So there's 4 different rums that go into this bottle here. So what we've done in the tasting packs is we've given you those 4 plus another one for the Black Tot, so you can actually try individually each island, each ingredient that we put in the mix. You can see what Barbados tastes like, you can see what Guyana tastes like, see what Jamaica tastes like, and why we picked these particular ones and use them in these ratios, and then see if you think we did a good job or not. So,
you know, we were talking about this yesterday when we were discussing sort of what to talk about today, and you know how we were going to frame this, because Mitch and I were going to go like totally let's just talk, and then we thought, well, maybe we should have a bit of structure, which is very un-Mitch and me. We're a bit rogue normally. And actually, the one thing we were saying is that I think people want more traceability in general. You know, people want to know what's going on in the product, and they're interested to understand. And I think, you know, when you start understanding components in something, you understand why you blend. And, you know, we were, one of our guys who's fabulous, who's on the call today, Gareth, did a talk for Mitch and I yesterday. And, you know, he was very much saying it's like making music, you know, different notes give different sort of sounds, and you know, I thought that was a really lovely way of putting it. And I think what hopefully we'll kind of talk through here is why the different sounds that we've got in the rum glass and in the glasses actually build to making Black Tot, because as you say, you know, the Navy stopped using Jamaican because it was too strong, but actually a little Jamaican funk can be quite cool. So Mitch, what are we starting with technically?
Absolutely. So if you've got the tasting pack, we're going to start with the Barbados sample, because I think all rum tasting should always start at Barbados. It's the home of rum. It's where it begins. Cheers, everyone. And if you are playing along at home, if you don't have these, like and you do have some rums that you can play along with, please just like grab a bottle of Barbados rum. Grab your, you know, whatever you've got at home, whether it's your Foursquare, your Plantation, your St. Nicholas Abbey, your Mount Gay, grab a bottle in. Absolutely, grab a bottle and have some Barbados rum with us if you've got it. If you haven't got Barbados rum, just grab any rum. If you haven't got rum, grab something and enjoy. So we're starting with Barbados. Barbados is like the home of rum. It's where molasses was first distilled into rum. We know that now. It was argued about for years, but Barbados really is where it all began. And they've got a real heritage, a real tradition there, you know, and it's very, you know, as anyone in the rum world knows right now, being very passionately fought over to protect it and initiate this GI into Barbados to protect their heritage of rum, because they do have a long-standing tradition. They are the originators. They are the where rum began. So it's quite right that they should have, you know, that sort of trademark, that GI on their rum to protect it. Barbados classically, we're seeing more and more different styles now, but classically you get this pot column balance. It's a very elegant, very refined style of rum. It was unusual to me, like in the places I've been in the Caribbean, you see a lot less people drinking you know, white overproof rum in Barbados. It's much more classic, elegant style that people are drinking. So, so the one we've got here, if you are tasting along with us, this is a 5-year Bajan rum. It's coming from Foursquare Distillery. It's beautiful. It gives you all these fruity, beautiful tropical notes in the Black Tot. I always think of Barbados rum as like the pina colada of rums. You know, it's if you imagine drinking rum on a beach, and you had your hammock and your pina colada in your hand and Rihanna's walking along, you know, you'd be on Barbados. You know, that's exactly where I imagine. That's my happy place.
Oh, you are there right now because you've got some palm tree and
we've got flamingos. I didn't see many flamingos in Barbados, but who knows, you know. And yeah, and this, we just think like you really can't do a Navy rum blend, I think, without Barbados in there. You know, it's played such an integral part in the history of the Navy rum blends. And yeah, I just think it's beautiful rum. You know, it's, as I say, like Barbados for years has been my go-to staple breakfast rum. So.
And I mean, if I'm looking at this and sort of describing it for people who don't have it, so that when they can taste Black Tot, that they understand it. For me, it's got this lovely sort of cherries and sweet almonds and like a little bit of orange blossom, and it's got all these really lovely sort of slightly wood spices. And I actually, this one, because Mitch and I have been bottling your packs the last week or so. And, you know, I think the thing is with these is that I don't think I actually really properly tasted this in the glass, and it's been sitting in my glass for a bit, and it's actually really opened up and given a really, really nice perfume to it. So I think for people out there, what I'm getting from it is lovely sweet wood spices and lovely fruit behind that's just sort of underpinning. And, you know, if I go back to Black Tot, I definitely get some of those high notes in that as well.
See, this is why, Dawn, you and Billy are in charge of the tasting notes. Like, you've got wood spices and cherry and coconuts and prunes, and I'm like pina coladas and Rihanna on the beach. Like, that's
I wonder which is going to resonate more with people. I think Rihanna.
We'd get a very different tasting sheet. But yeah, it's beautiful rum, and for me, it's one of my favorite components in the fall, you know. And like, I think this is, for me, one of the things which I was really keen that we kept with Black Tot, because again, often when you have a blended rum, it's very easy to shy away from single origins and go, oh yeah, it's the secret recipe, it's Caribbean, don't look too hard, or you know, and that's not all brands. Like a lot of brands are very clear about, you know, what goes in there and sort of give you a rough idea of how much, and you know, you get an idea of, okay, this makes up the most of it, this maybe is a little bit, and for me it was like, how do we take that a little bit further and get really, really specific? I don't know if it's worth, can I share a screen? Is that
yeah.
Is that a thing? Probably just, this is like a little thing we're building at the moment that, you know, once we're out of all the coronavirus days and I'm able to come and see you guys in person, we'll share all this stuff with you. But this is, I'm not sure if Billy's, oh yeah, here we go.
Billy giving you permission to take over the screen. Don't show us your emails, Mitch.
Yeah, well, here we go. Whisky Exchange Facebook, important place to be. Everyone go and like the page. Where do I find the thing? Hold on. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so this is how specific we kind of want to get with it. Okay, so these are just some notes we're sending out to you know, our distributors and different people around the world, because we're sort of like, you know, just starting to release this. But if you look at the blend composition here, so we want to give you like exactly what we put into it. So the 5-year Barbados makes up 35% of this blend. The Guyana in total makes up 60%, and we're going to try both of those components individually. And then you've got the 5% with the Jamaica as well. I mean, basic just information, like we don't chill filter it because it's 46%, we don't have to. Ex-bourbon casks, all of it's tropically aged, so it's all aged in the country that it was made. We don't add any sugar, but I thought it was interesting to note that there is a bit of sugar that just comes from the barrel when it's aging. So we sort of put that on there because if we're going to be transparent.
That's also quite natural that wood sugars are naturally going to go into a product. I think that's key to add.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just, I don't know, it's just, these are the kind of things. And what we want is for people to be like, you know, tell us what you want to know. Like if there's something you really want to know and you want to find out more about the rum, like let's show it to you. Why would we hide it from you? You know, that's the fun part, and we can taste all these individual little bits, get really geeky about it, and yeah, hopefully not only enjoy the blend and the finished thing, but actually get a deeper appreciation for each of the islands as well.
So, I mean, I think what's really interesting, and I'm going back to this transparency thing, and something we've tried to do very much on Whisky Exchange is really, I think rum can be quite a complicated subject because there's not much information out there. There's very few regulations. I mean, some islands 100% are, you know, like Jamaica's working on it, Barbados working on it, Martinique has a lot of laws just purely because of the French history. But I think what's really important, and I think what you're doing is fantastic because people want to know, are interested, and we've done a lot of work in terms of classification of rums, and you know, please visit the website and see what we've been doing, because not only have we looked at it from a production side, but also from a flavor side, because I think flavors how people enjoy, and you know, whether it's a really rich, treacly rum or a light and uncomplicated one, which is Mitch's favorite. We can, you know, really kind of get people to understand and talk about it. So, you know, if we move on to so we've had the Barbados, and what was the percentage on that's in the blend?
So it's 35% of the blend.
35 Barbados. And then we have, I think it'll be really interesting to taste the next two side by side because they're both Guyana. For sure. And actually, if you look at my two glasses, color-wise, they're very interesting.
Yeah, this was the thing. So this was an interesting part of our discussion, sort of get behind the scenes a little bit with us. So when we, first of all, it's very unusual to get all the component parts individually anyway. Like normally that's not a thing that's done. To give you an idea, so for the new Black Tot, because of some of the rums we wanted to get, we go through EA Shear in Amsterdam. There are brokers for rum, and to get rums like Foursquare, you have to go through those companies. So they're a great place to.
Is that correct, Mitch?
Pardon?
Shear is the biggest in the world for.
I would say comfortably, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, I certainly don't know of anyone who would even come anywhere near to them. So Shear specialize in creating rum blends and having a whole library of components that they can put together, and essentially, like, to make a rum, anyone can make a rum, do you know what I mean? Like you and I today, Dawn, could go, let's create the new
you know how good you are at blending. Mitch actually blends wines together as well as rums, so you know, Mitch is master blender.
I imagine someone would be very offended if I did that.
Someone might be slightly offended if you did that, Mitch.
Especially if they were really nice wines. But that sort of ties back into the idea earlier, like just as someone would be mortified if I blended their Scotch with Irish whiskey, certainly Gareth, who's on the call, he'd slap me, you know, I'd be out. But you know, just as that would be offensive to someone to do that, it's such a part of rum history and rum culture, you know. So it's very, you know, it's a very accepted part of our tradition, whereas it would seem completely weird to do it in most other places, you know. So this was a good experience for us. So we did the blend, and the blend's lovely, and you know, my first question when I started was like, well, can we get the individual components? Because I'd like to do tastings like this where we try each individual part. And that never really happens, because sometimes when you're putting ingredients together, like not all the ingredients taste as good as the other ingredients, you know, like the finished product is meant to be bigger than the sum of its parts. So like you might have one that's slightly bitter, or you might have someone that's really rich and something that's really funky, and it's how you proportion those that taste really good. It's like it would be like going to a restaurant and saying, can you just give me this dish, but I just want all the ingredients separated so I can try them individually, you know?
That's called deconstructed gastronomy. It is a thing, Mitch. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. There we go. So yeah, we're not all as fancy as you, Dawn, but but
I'm the posh half.
But the idea of doing this and going into the blend, I think, is important, because otherwise you're always at the mercy of the blender. You know, they could cover up a good rum with, or slide some other rums in there and like mix some barrels that aren't as good with some other barrels, you know, like you don't really know what those individual components taste like. And we wanted to get under that hood. And one of the first things we realized was when we got these components, then Shia very kindly said, yes, okay, we'll give you the individual rums so you can do these tastings. And we got them. And we had these 4 rums. I don't know if you can, I'll try and hold them up so you can see them next to each other. We've got these 4 rums. They've all got, you know, lovely light golden hues, except for this one here. And this one's really dark. And we were like, which one's that one? And they said, oh, that's the unaged Guyana. It's like, unaged? That looks like it's been aging for 100 years, you know? And normally, I guess the typical thing would be like to go, yeah, it's definitely natural. It's definitely, and even for us as a rum, it was kind of interesting, because we had said from the start, we don't want any added color. And everyone said, okay, no added color. We won't add color, no added color. And then it was only when we saw the components themselves, like, oh, okay, well, that didn't come from a barrel. And even if it wasn't a barrel, it'd take about 50 years to look like that. So there's some things where you go, okay, well, why has that happened? You know, is that just how it comes? Like, yeah, that's how it comes. That's straight from Guyana. That's how they make it. That's their unaged component that gives you this particular flavor. Now we could get another unaged, which would be clear, but it doesn't give you the flavor that we want for this particular rum, because they have all different marks and they have all different styles. And Guyana itself makes, I think at last count, it's about 24 different marks of rum. And depending on where you get those 24, if they're unaged, if they're aged, where they are, they get, some of them they color. So yes, our darkest rum is our unaged, and our slightly lighter rum is our 3 to 5 year old Guyana. The unaged, for me, gives a real like bitter chocolate note to it. It's like that. It's almost like the bitters in your old fashioned, you know. And on its own, it's nice. It's okay. Like it's all right. But it's really in the blend where that bitterness comes through and allows you to.
So what you're saying, if we're going back to the Rihanna, this is your M&M.
M&M, right? I don't know if it's gangster enough for M&M. I don't know, but it's pretty gangster. I don't know. When it's
gangster.
unaged and that dark, it's pretty gangster, isn't it?
So we're reversing roles here, Mitch.
All right. Okay. See, these are the kind of tasting notes that people want, Dawn.
I know. I hear. I'm learning from you every day.
Next week, you're going to tune into Whisky Exchange. There's going to be new categories of rum available. It'll be hip hop, R&B, country music, folk. It's going to be a revolution in the spirits industry.
I'm there.
So yeah, tasting these two sides. So again, if you don't have these rums, that's okay. Go and grab some beautiful Guyanese rum. You've got some wonderful El Dorado rum, hopefully in your cabinet. Go and grab that. The 15 is my favorite. It's delicious. Go and try it. This second rum though, the 3 to 5 year old rum, if you do have it, this is like my favorite out of all of them. Like if we were going to just bottle one of them, it would be this guy. This one is absolutely delicious. It's wonderful.
You know what, it's funny because again tasting it too, I see you've got that little bitterness on this one, but actually it adds a little bit of kind of depth to it. I think it just gives it, whereas actually maybe if it didn't have that bitterness, it'd be a bit kind of fat and round. That bitterness actually gives it acidity, which for me is a good thing in spirits. And then yeah, you're right, actually there's something very drinkable about this aged one. It's kind of got like toffee and pear and coconut. It's kind of in my head like a rum, if that makes sense. It's got that kind of toffee apple and like burnt caramel, and it's just delicious, actually.
I need to start writing all of these tasting notes down. If you can,
you can buy them from me later. It will be a charge. And I don't work for free, Mitch.
Make sure you're recording this, people. These are valuable notes. It's funny. Tasting notes are one of those things. I've actually always shied away from them in tastings, because I've got a friend in Australia, a guy called Paul, who's very, very good at picking out like that one key flavor. And once he says it to you, you can't taste anything else. And I'll be drinking something. I'll be like, oh, this is really nice. He'll be like, this tastes like coconut. And you're like, oh, it does. And now it just tastes like coconut the whole time. And you can't get past that flavor. So it's interesting. Like I always love people to sort of have a play with it themselves, see what they think, and then we'll tell them what to think.
Right. You know, like whenever I do tastings with live people where, you know, there's a bit more interaction, I think it's always good to hear what they say, because sometimes people say something and you're like, I never had that, because taste is so individual. You know, some people taste like you taste what you grew up with or what your frame of reference is. So if I say Christmas cake to, you know, someone from Asia, they're going to look at me and go, what the hell is she talking about? And I remember the other day, everyone talks about cat pee and wine. I was like, who the fuck gets cat pee and wine? I mean, I clean my cat's litter every week. It doesn't taste like that. And then I had a Sauvignon Blanc the other day, and I was like, oh my God, it stinks of cat's pee. And you know, like, I think sometimes you just have to have like one little thing that gives you that bam, 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 and you're like, what the hell just went on there? I agree, but considering no one has the rum right now, I think it's probably best not to know what it tastes like.
Just imagine how delicious this is. You know, we're just going to tease you with rums.
Mitch and I are enjoying.
But Guyana, I guess coming back to the country as a style, obviously brands like El Dorado are by far the most famous to come out of Guyana. There's one distillery now in Guyana, which is at the Diamond Distillery, sometimes called Demerara Distillers. And Guyana's got a really interesting sugar history, because from the Demerara River that goes through Guyana, you've got, you know, surrounded by sugarcane. They made famously Demerara sugar. That's where it comes from. And nowadays, if you go to a supermarket, you'll see Demerara sugar for sale. And if you look at the origin, it almost never actually comes from Guyana. You know, Demerara just became a style name, much like Navy Rum did, rather than a GI, a product of origin, which is again why it's an important thing in rum. But with Guyana, so you had this.
Can you pause 1 second? We have a guest appearance.
Oh, a guest appearance.
So we have an arm that's just come into my frame of reference. What would you like to taste? Sekinda is arming, social distance wise. I do apologize. My boss has just entered the room and demanded alcohol of me, which is
while Dawn's pouring some rum Sekinda, Mitch, I have a question for you from the Facebooks.
Okay.
It's from Sean Frederick. It's a very long question discussing the joys of Matt Pittrick's research, but it ends with basically sort of saying, based on all Matt's research into naval rum and the history, is there anything you can share about Black Tot's technical approach to blending that aims to integrate all of these different, delicious, diverse elements into a whole greater than the sum of its parts? Basically, how do you take all these bits and make it into something that's better than all the individual bits? Is there anything particular that you guys do?
Absolutely. So, first of all, hi Sean, how are you doing? Sean is the best person in the room to have to like ask you that question where you go, okay, now I have to really think about it. So I'm really glad you're there. Okay, let's get a bit more into the Navy rum. So as I mentioned earlier, Matt's been doing a lot of research into it this past year. And one of the things that we were really interested in was like how those blends came together. So not just the origin from the islands or the countries that the rum was coming from, but how did they actually put this rum together in the first place? We discovered the rum actually retroactively. So Sekinda, whose hand you just saw coming in for the glass over there, He actually, the first ever Black Tot that came out was this guy, The Last Consignment. And he found these flagons of Navy rum. When I say found, this sailor had come to him with a couple of flagons of Navy rum and said, will you buy these flagons off me? And he was like, yes, okay, let's do that. And then another sailor friend came along with 5 more flagons, and then they told another friend who brought 10. And at that point, Skinner was like, where are you getting all these flagons from? They must have a source. And it took about 2 years to find it. And eventually he found all these flagons of Navy rum, brought them all together, and we bottled it as Last Consignment. But my mission, I guess, my job at the moment, and one of the things that I've been talking to Matt a lot about is what was that actual rum back in the day? Because a lot of the time the sailors themselves didn't know. I'm in touch with this guy, a wonderful gentleman called John Hume, who actually served the tot on ships from 1961 up until Black Tot Day on 1970. And he's just been emailing me all these wonderful stories about, you know, how they used to steal extra rum and how they used to get away with having a bit more and all this kind of stuff. And I asked him, I was like, you know, what was in the rum? Did you ever get to see the blend? Did you ever get to see what's in there? And he was like, came from the Caribbean. It came from, you know, it's just, there's very little information given out about it. So a lot of this research, we're trying to go back and find these old records and try to see what they actually did. So one of the things that Matt found out was to blend this rum together. When the Navy first started the rum ration in 1731, it was really a case of you pick up some rum from here, you drink it, you sell, you buy some more rum over here, you drink it, and there was no way of measuring it. There's no way of actually seeing what was coming in and coming out. And the Navy at one point in the sort of very early 1800s said, okay, let's change this whole approach. We're going to build 3 giant blending vats in London. We're going to connect these vats about 1/3 of the way up with a pipe that connects the 3 vats together. So the 3 vats can essentially blend together continuously. Then these ships will come in. So they built a docking system for the first time, because originally, if you wanted to offload your cargo from the Caribbean and the River Thames, you would have to join a queue of ships. And that queue could be up to 6 weeks long waiting to offload your ship. Now, I don't know if you've ever been on a ship for 6 weeks. Probably a lot more people have in 2020 than ever before in the last 200 years. But if you were on a ship for those 6 weeks and you had a load of expensive cargo, you had rum, you had sugar, you had spices, you had all of these exotic ingredients from the Caribbean, they have a tendency to disappear. And the longer that ship was in hold, the more stuff would go missing and go off the side of the boat and be traded off by the crews. So they had to speed it up. What they did, they built this dock system. You could have 12 boats at a time, all coming in, all getting offloaded simultaneously. And then with all the rum, they would pour these rum barrels that were commissioned by the Navy. So the Navy would say, you know, we want 100,000 gallons of Barbados rum or West Indies rum or whatever rum it was. And all the merchants would come through and say, we'll give it to you for this much, we'll give it to you for this much. They brought all of these, you know, these barrels in. They would get the barrels, pour them into the vats, and then have these giant churners churning the vats together. Remember, the vats are all connected by this pipe 1/3 the way up, so all the rum from all the different barrels is sort of merging together. And this happened continuously for, well, from the early 1800s to pretty much up to 1970. And they were blending at any one time 4 million gallons of rum for the Navy. Like, this was a serious operation. This wasn't like, oh, we're going to have a few bottles and see how it goes. Like, no, this was part of the tradition. The rum had to be good. And these giant wooden vats that they were blending, you know, first of all, they're wood. So that's going to impart a bit of flavor, but not necessarily as much over the time, and certainly for the size that these vats were. But then at the top of the vats, it was all open air. So all of this rum, the angel share, if you like, the amount of rum that was evaporating off these barrels was huge. It was almost like Caribbean levels. You'd be losing like 10% a year. So there was a huge loss of rum, and that will affect the flavor as well, obviously. And And yeah, as I say, for over, we're trying to find out exact dates at the moment, so we can actually say exactly what year the vats were built and exactly what year they were dismantled. But pretty much you've got anywhere between 100 to 150 odd years, maybe slightly more, where these vats were in operation and continuously blending. So, one term you hear in rum sometimes is Solera, and Solera systems, blending all different casks together, blending all these But in Navy rum, this was...
We'll talk about Solera in a minute, Mitch.
these vats continuously blending sort of lends to that idea. So I guess that's a very roundabout way of getting to things that Sean already knows about, but just to fill in the background for people. But in answer to Sean's question, yes, I would love to get as close as possible to that system. If Kinder lets us build giant wooden open vats with a pipe third way up, then we'll do it.
Might need a bigger car park, Mitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we've got some space. We'll see if we can do it. But yeah, like I would love to integrate that. I would love to integrate, looking at now this idea that Navy rum wasn't just necessarily the English islands, although it was predominantly those. Looking at, could we create some blends with introducing some different islands, different countries together, seeing if we can do some really cool, intricate stuff. And really, I guess our idea, whereas you've got like the Black Tot Last Consignment is the actual Navy rum from those ships. It's like we put it in a bottle. The idea with this is to start it again, to start that blend again. So Ollie Chilton, who's our head blender, who put this together, we've got these individual components. It's really cool. Like I will say something to Ollie and Ollie will just like go and take it and do things which I thought would be too big to ask for, but he's like, oh no, I've just done this anyway. It's really cool. So now we've got like all the components are now individually blending in their own barrels and different finishes. So we've got some port cask finishes, sherry cask finishes, all these different casks which we've laid down with the components, so we can actually adjust the blend and keep evolving the blend as it goes out. And whether that stays as Finest Caribbean, or we keep evolving this one, or we bring out some new individual blends as well. We will try and do Navy rum justice, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Now, how many goes did it take Ollie to get to Black Tot?
So there's different rumors out there, but we believe it's 26.
26. Well, I did taste some of them along the way, because I think this has been a labor of love for about 4 or 5 years now. It has been very interesting to see the evolution of the brand. I haven't tasted all 28, or I have to 27. Sorry.
20 or 26, or it could be we'll still try and work it out. But today, Andrew, who's on our team, showed me the cupboard where the original blends all
I can actually probably show them.
No, so after this call is finished, I'm raiding that cupboard, and we're gonna try 26 different rum blends, and I'm sure they'll all taste good.
No, I think that's, I mean, in a way, I guess it's harking back to what would have happened in Navy rum. You're saying they just came in with vats of stuff and poured it in. So it was a consistently evolving, what I would call perpetual aging, not Solera aging system. Being a geek.
It's not like you, Dawn.
The MW in me coming out. But I think it's interesting to kind of think about that it's nice to know that this is an evolving project, and it's going to keep changing. It's going to keep doing, and I think, we've talked about the two rums from Guyana. Should we have a look at Jamaica? Because I have a love for Jamaica.
Absolutely. So again, if you've got the pack, grab your Jamaica rum. If you haven't, if you've got some Jamaica rum at home, grab some funk. It's delicious. So Jamaica's fantastic, and Jamaica's become a real focal point, especially amongst all the rum geeks and rum nerds of the world, and the Esther Heads or Dundercats or whatever name that is currently going.
A Dundercat.
Thundercats, yeah, that's
Tiger hat back on. We're bringing the tigers back.
It's Thundercat time.
Are you a Thundercat, Mitch? What Thundercat are you?
No idea. Probably like, what's the little, what is it, Snarf? Is that the right show? I'm probably that cat. So Jamaica's unique. Again, for anyone who's into their rum, you're going to know all this about Jamaica. But Jamaica is that unique island. It's got such beautiful high intensity rums. Like I always think of, if you had like a flavor chart of the Caribbean, you've got Jamaica near the top. Like Jamaica, everything's turned up to 11. You know, it's like everything's big, everything's loud. You know, and it almost reflects their culture. You know, it's reggae and it's loud. It's probably like when a Jamaican walks into the room, you know they're in the room. Like if Ian Burrell was here right now, you would know Ian Burrell was here.
Because, also, we know because he has a hat. Because Ian doesn't
the hat helps as well. Yeah.
He's in the hat.
So hi Ian, if you're watching. I think he's doing another tasting tonight as well.
Yeah.
So tune into that afterwards if you can. With his beautiful Equiano rum. It's very, very nice. And yeah, so Jamaican rum makes itself known, and there's a reason for that. You know, like the process is different. The way they make the rum is different. Traditionally, Jamaican was always pot still rum. And then sort of around the 1930s, 1940s, they introduced column stills into the island. And at the time, that was a real taboo. You know, that was a real contentious subject to bring in column stills into Jamaican rum. It's like, how dare we bring in silent spirit into our rum? And nowadays, probably the biggest Jamaican rum in the world is Appleton Estate, which is a pot and column still blend, you know. And why is it so popular? Because it's drinkable, you know, it's not as aggressive as some of these.
Joy makes it, and we all love joy. I mean,
exactly. Well, that helps as well. That's a big part. And it is, you know, it's beautiful. And like, you know, if you ever get a chance to try Joy's Appleton Joy, it's one of the best rums in the world. It's one of the best things I've ever tasted. So Jamaican rum doesn't have to be that funky characteristic necessarily. It doesn't have to be super ester heavy, but that is one of the things that's really coming to the forefront in the rum world right now. So I was having a chat with a friend in Sydney who runs a great bottle store there called the Oak Barrel. If you're in Sydney, go and support Scott at the Oak Barrel. It's a fantastic place. And he was saying, you know, for him, these funky Jamaican rums, which he was really getting into, he kind of saw the same thing as like 10, 12 years ago, where everyone in the whiskey world suddenly became peat obsessed. You know, it was like, how many ppm is in this whiskey? Like, I want it so smooth. Like, if it doesn't, yeah, if it's not popping and if it isn't clogging up my lungs with smoke, then it's not peaty enough, you know. And it's like, but does it taste good? Is it? And they're like, oh yes, absolutely. It's got to be peated, you know. And I often find Jamaican rums a similar thing. You know, when people get really into the Jamaican rum, it's like, unless it makes you cry, it's not a proper Jamaican rum. And I'm like, no, like, not always. Sometimes, yeah, you want that, you know, funkiness, but sometimes it's really extreme. Like there's a couple of great bottlings out at the moment from Velio, where you've got from Long Pond, and you've got
from the Long Pond. It hurts.
Like the Long Pond,
it hurts.
the Long Pond Teco, and I've got if he's watching, he'll be laughing. But very good friend in Amsterdam who has one of the best rum selections there. And I was saying to him, I was like, this is ridiculous, you know, like, when would you ever drink this? This is so intense. It's like 1500 esters. It's basically the closest you'll ever get to drinking rocket fuel. And Chris is just like, oh no, that's perfect. That's where it should be. I'm like, what? So
sometimes, Mitch, it's gotta hurt.
No, it is. And, you know, fair play to people who can just knock those back. But traditionally, those high ester rums, those funky rums, would be a blending tool. They'd never be something you drank on their own. They were an ingredient. They were a tool, you know, just like, you know, again, just like adding chili to a dish or adding a little spice or something like that. You know, the idea isn't to eat that chili pepper by itself. The idea is that you add it to something else and it it gives depth, it gives complexity to all the other flavors in that dish. So again, Jamaican rum, completely unique. We wanted to put in that just a little bit about high ester. So even though, you know, Navy rum, as we said, sort of got you over time, actually phased out the Jamaican rum and actually moved Jamaican rum out of the blend. So it would have become very, very faint, especially by the time we got rums like Last Consignment. Today, if we were making that Navy rum blend today, people are getting into Jamaican rum. People want that intensity of flavor. People are moving towards those bigger, bolder flavors. And we see it not just in rum, but in whiskey and gin and everything else. You know, people want more flavor in their products. So we've reintroduced a little bit of Jamaican rum into the blend. So this is 5% of the blend. It's only a little touch, but again, you only need a little touch. It's not super high ester. It's not going to be the funkiest rum you ever have, but sort of at that plumber Wedderburn level, that 100 to 250 kind of level of esters. You can smell it instantly. Like as soon as you smell a Jamaican rum, you know, okay, you know, if you had that blind tasting, yeah, that's Jamaican rum.
I think for me, like one of the rums that has the most sense of terroir, besides something like Clahan, is Jamaica, because you put your nose in it and you're like, hell yeah, I'm there. And it's that sort of funky, medicinal, banana, you know, that pop, pop, pop. And, you know, and I think you're right, you know, when you have too much of it, you're like, whoa, my palate's just being assaulted. But that little hint of it, and actually it'd be really nice to sort of look at the Black Tot now, because I think, you know, you've got the Bayesian fruit and dried spice and sort of nuttiness. You've got the two Guyana, one that's got that lovely bitterness and one that's all about that toffee apple and richness. And then you've got a little bit of Jamaica funk. And actually I think it's a perfect time to look at Black Tot and have a tot. I even have my top cup.
Oh, watch out. So just on, I liked your Jamaican pop, 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 by the way, like my favorite expression.
That'll be £150 for you to use.
Yeah, well, Paul McFadden gave me one that he probably would charge me a lot less for, but he used to say it was like the wub wub, you know, it's like your bass in the music, you know, like you put a little bit of Jamaica in there or in a cocktail or whatever it is you're blending together, and you just get that subwoofer in the back, you know, like, all right, okay. It's like a night out in Essex, you know, you've too much bass. So it's, but yeah, let's get on to the
I've already poured mine. You were super slow there, Mitch.
Well, I'll make up for it. So yeah, so this is our new Black Tot. This is the Finest Caribbean. Yeah, we called it Finest Caribbean because we didn't know what to call it, and we thought it sounded better than the new Black Tot, or the, you know, the one that isn't 700 pounds Black Tot. So yeah, Black Tot.
Here's one I made earlier.
That's the 1,500 pound Black Tot. That's because
even better.
Dawn Davies is very fancy. But yeah, so this is our Finest Caribbean. This is the combination of these 4 rums that you get in your tasting pack. So it all comes together. We bottle it at 46.2%, and we think it's delicious. I know Dawn Davies enjoys it very, very much, which is part of why we're here today.
You know, it's like this, Mitch. I have to get everyone to read the back of my t-shirt. What does it say, Mitch?
We're not going to repeat it, but needless to say, some questionable t-shirt choices were made, and we're making other ones. So, so watch this space. We're also going to make, if anyone's keen, we're going to make some Black Tot tiki shirts as well, because we've got to have a tiki shirt. So
rayon.
Ideally 100% rayon, because this is, you know, if God wore a tiki shirt, this is what it would be made of. So,
so back to Black Tot, Mitch.
Anyway.
Oh. Have we lost audio? Can everyone hear?
Billy,
can we hear? Yeah? Okay. Sorry, Mitch. I lost audio.
It's okay. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
All right.
You are all back now. Sorry about that. Bit of a techie hitch. Sorry, all fixed.
So Billy is, if you've ever watched Matrix 3, Billy is like the architect in the Matrix. Like he's just like sees the world in numbers and is just making all of this magic happen around the world. So thank you.
I am surrounded by screens. But anyway, no, so Mitch, before we jump off the Black Tot again, I've got a quick question for you from Nick, who's hanging around in our Zoom chat. He was wondering, do you have any book recommendations about rum?
Ooh, good question, Nick.
I want to know as well, because I've been buying a load and I need to buy more.
Man, there's quite a few. It depends.
You told me off for not having one. What was the one you told me off for not having on the website? You said was very good, the American one.
Matt Petrek's new book, the Minimalist Tiki book. So yes, if Matt's listening, we should definitely get a whole load of books and sell them on Whisky Exchange, because it will be great. And I don't want to pay the shipping charge myself, so I'd like to buy a big box of them, please. Thank you, Dawn.
I am PA, just so everyone knows.
So book recommendations, good question. And a Bottle of Rum is one of my favorites. That's just a really, really enjoyable read. So yeah, And a Bottle of Rum. Check out, what else you've got? Not technically a rum book, but a book that a friend of mine, Tom Bulmer in Sydney, put on, 1492. Gives you a really good history of Caribbean and exploration, but not directly rum, but just gives you a good history explanation. What else do I love? One of my favorites, actually, again, not necessarily, it is rum, but definitely more tiki focused, is Smuggler's Cove by Martin Cates and Rebecca Cate. If you haven't been to Smuggler's Cove in San Francisco before, they put out a book, and it's really good if you want to get a handle on like what tiki is and what tiki cocktails are, and get into that. They're wonderful. That's a wonderful book to read. What else? You've got obviously anything by Beach Bum Berry, because he is the reason. If you've ever had a zombie cocktail and it was good, you have Jeff Beach Bum Berry to thank for it. Like, he spent years tracking down the original ingredients for the zombie, because they were all secret codes and hidden away and passed on from word of mouth. And he actually found this recipe and tracked it down. So anything by Beach Bum Berry is worth a read. There's a great book coming out this year. Again, Matt Petrek is releasing a Navy book this year, which, if you're in the Navy rum theme, is going to be really good. Ian Williams, Rum by Ian Williams it's a hard read. Like, that one's not a like, oh, I'm having a relaxing time. It's like, it's full on, because Ian Williams is a genius, and you've got to really pay attention.
One, Mitch, that you would say is a really good like kind of intro. So if you were just sort of starting out and you kind of wanted a little bit of tech, you wanted to learn a little bit about the countries, is there one you'd recommend? I mean, I read Dave Brooms and Shistons and people like that, just to kind of get a grounding. I think that was...
I think And a Bottle of Rum is probably one of my favorite, just as a read, because it's so well written. But if you're into your cocktails and into your tiki bars, I'd probably go with Smuggler's Cove, just because it gives you a nice bit of rum history, it gives you a nice bit of tiki history, explains how it came into the bars, and it will, like, if like me, you came into this through cocktail bars, whether it was as a guest or a bartender or whatever, yeah, if Billy's actually showing you a copy of right now on his screen, if you can see it.
Yeah, literally, this is the book which turned up yesterday. Smuggler's Cove. It's absolutely fantastic. I definitely recommend it.
Did you read it yesterday, Billy?
Sorry?
You read it all yesterday?
Oh, no, just went on the piles of books to read. I've got lots of food books to read, don't worry.
I was like, Billy, damn.
But yeah, great question, Nick, and I'm sure there's dozens I've missed out there, but put them in the comments if you've got more book recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to know.
If I've missed one, I'd like to read it. So
Mitch, back to some liquid.
Oh yes. Cheers, everyone, if you're drinking along at home.
Well done, G-Dog.
So yeah, what would you like to know about Black Tot, Dawn?
Well, I mean, I think we've talked a lot about the sort of traceability. We've talked a lot about the liquid, but actually, I kind of want people at home to kind of get a sense of. Actually, we've talked about the parts. What does the sum give us? You know, what do you think? You know, I think we look at rum, and one thing I absolutely adore about rum is that it's so versatile as a spirit. So you can drink it neat, you can have it in cocktails, you can mix it just with like ginger ale is a simple serve. You know, if I gave you kind of 3 ways to drink Black Tot, what would your 3 ways be, Mitch?
1 with a speed pourer, 2 in a fancy glass, and 3, yeah, in your favorite cocktail, I guess. I mean, like this was kind of one of the things which was important about bringing out Finest Caribbean, because you know obviously before this Black Tot we had the 2 that you can see on Dawn's and the 1 other here. So you had Last Consignment. Dawn's holding up now, if you can see on Dawn's screen.
Hello, in case I need to say something in order for them to go. There we go.
Yeah, so you've got those 2 rums are fascinating because the Last Consignment is one of the only bottlings of actual Navy rum, not just a rum that's called Navy rum, but an actual bottling of Navy rum in the world. I
feel I should drink it for them.
Absolutely. So the Last Consignment is the real stuff. That's what they had on the ships. The 40-year-old is, to my knowledge, it's certainly the oldest Guyanese bottling I've ever seen. I know we've still got 1 or 2 casks left of it that we're still aging. One, we did a bottling of 42-year-old for Luca Gargano in Italy. So I don't think we did much. I think it was like maybe 12 bottles, 24 bottles, if that. So there is some slightly older than it, but from those same casks.
I mean, that's pure syrup. I've just had a cheeky wee drop. And it's incredible. It's like prunes, raisins, tea. It's insane. Sorry, Mitch, you don't have any.
Yeah, no, it's I think I've got, no, so I had this empty bottle and I actually siphoned off some before
It's one I made earlier.
Before I have to leave, so I do have a little bit. This is the actual Navy rum. You've got the 40-year-old, which is one of the oldest Guyanese rums in the world. Like it's woody, it's big, it's bold. Like it's if anything, it's been in the cask so long, it's like only for the real rum geeks out there.
It's like a proper aged balsamic, you know, it's that really intense flavor.
For sure. And the Finest Caribbean was, I guess it was an interesting step for us, and a lot of people have. I saw online, you know, like you see people get on Ministry of Rum. They're like, oh, here we go, someone's copied like these guys, and they've brought out another rum and called it Black Tot, and it's not the same thing. And it's like, well, no, it's us, but you know, not every day do you want to drink a 700-pound bottle of rum. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a lot. Like I wish I was that rich. I wish I could afford to drink 700-pound bottles of rum daily, but it's not a common thing. So the idea of restarting the blend and actually making something that wasn't finite, that wasn't going to be just a moment of history and just a piece of time, like actually making something today and going, can we learn from what they did? Can we learn from these blending processes? Can we learn from what they're doing and not just do what another blend does and go, oh, it's a secret, but actually go, no, let's really look at this. Let's look at how we can evolve the blend every year. And this is where Finest Caribbean came in. So comparatively, obviously compared to Last Consignment, I think it's like 30, 40 pounds a bottle, depending on where you're getting it. But it's
whiskyexchange.com.
Whiskyexchange.com, obviously the only place where I buy my rum. We'll work on that video later. We'll do like that Suntory time. But yeah, it's, you know, you don't want to drink 700-pound bottles of rum every day, because, you know, there's people that have messaged me saying, I haven't opened this because I'm so scared that, you know, what if I don't like it, or what if it's not for me, and I've, you know, or what if it's just I'm not ready for this rum because I'm still getting into rum, but I knew this was special, so I bought a bottle. And it's like, well, yeah, first of all, when all of this is over and we can actually do tastings in real life again, I will bring as much of this as I can, as much as they'll let me take, and we will all drink it together, and it will be our celebration coming out of quarantine. But in the meantime, you've got this, which is this is your workhorse. This is your day-to-day. This is something that you can throw in a cocktail and not cry tears that you're wasting 700 pounds of rum in. You know, you can make a daiquiri with this. You can make an old-fashioned with this. Or you can drink it on its own. So hopefully it's a nice, this is like more like your day-to-day daily tot. And then the last consignment can be something a bit more special. So.
And I know you've been playing around with cocktails, because pre-coronavirus, I remember going down to the bar and you were sort of putting out some cocktails for us to try and play with, which was fantastic. And, you know, it is a great rum for cocktails. And I think that's really interesting. And for me, it's kind of a rum that sits in a couple of camps. It's a rum that sits in a rum camp. It's a rum that a whiskey drinker can drink, because there is a little bit of kind of intensity and complexity there. And I think, you know, you're right. It's a very versatile rum. And I think, actually, Billy, before we kind of round off, because I'm just conscious of time, do we have any more questions from anyone? Does anyone want to ask anything? Anyone in the room want to?
Yeah. I have one more from Nick, who asked about the books earlier. He's wondering, what's the ratio of pot to column still spirit through the different rums in the tasting we've done so far? Or is that, he says, if that is a meaningful question?
It's always a meaningful question. Everything's meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Nick's being mysterious. He's not got his video on, but I want to hang out with Nick because he sounds like a cool dude. So I guess to clarify that, and obviously because I don't have a chat in front of me, I'm going to sort of answer this two ways. So in terms of, if you're talking about ratio in terms of the pot and column still blends versus the pot still, so the Jamaica is the only pot still in there that's 100% pot still, and that's 5% of the blend. The other 95% is a ratio of pot and column together. Now, if your question is individually in each component, how much pot versus how much column is in that individual rum, that is harder to answer because that's done by the maker, by the distillery itself. So like for our Barbados example, we'd have to bring Richard Seal on and ask him exactly exactly how many percent pot still did you do by how many percent column still, and he will probably say, no, I'm not going to tell you. So so it's harder to get that exact ratio together. Like if we have that information, we'll give it to you, and I'll certainly try and get it. But yeah, in terms of pot column rums versus just pot still rum, 95% is a pot column blend, and then the Jamaica is your 100% pot. And you can, I guess, you know, again, there is always a little, like, you know, producers don't always want to tell you exactly how much they did it, for two reasons. One, because it's, you know, it's their baby, it's their secret, it's their thing that they're producing. But two as well, the other thing to bear in mind is that every ratio will change slightly from blend to blend. Like even where we're giving you our 35%, 40, 20, 5% blend components, if that rum doesn't taste quite where we want it to, we might put 1% more in Jamaica, or we might put a couple % more Guyana. Like it's just like when you're cooking and you're following the recipe, and some people really follow the recipes exactly, and some people just go, a bit of this, bit of that, bit more. And sometimes you might use the recipe as a base, but then you taste it and you go, needs more salt, or needs more spice, or needs more this. And rum is very much the same, you know, and rum blending is very much the same. Like there has to be, it can't just be science. Otherwise we'd just have machines making all the rum, and we'd have ice stills, and everyone would just be using robots to make rum, and there'd be no human interaction at all. Like we could do that. We have the technology to do that. Wow. So just edit that. But yeah, the art, the feel, like just like for me, it's like when you go to a restaurant and you taste the food and you can taste it's been made with love, or you go to someone's home. Like when you have a home cooked dinner, it tastes different to having it out, and there's a love that goes into it, and there's an individuality that goes into it, and it's something that can't just be, you can't just write that down. You have to taste it, you have to experience it. So yeah, I know that's probably a bit of a faffy answer for what you're asking.
The answer, Mitch?
But yeah,
well, Mitch, actually, at least I've got a few more questions. The next one is the blending of the rums to make the final drink. Is that done in the Caribbean or is that done elsewhere?
No, so all of our blending currently is all done in Amsterdam at Sheer. Again, Sheer is like a big mystery in the rum world. Like it's a big secret. No one wants to say they use Sheer, but if pretty much everyone, unless it's from that distillery, they're using Sheer. Sheer are, they are so good at what they do, and they're so good at brokering all these rums. And there are certain rums that you cannot buy direct from the distillery, like they just won't do it. So like we would, for instance, Foursquare is a good example. I would love to buy the Foursquare direct from that distillery and get Richard to put a barrel on the boat and ship it over to me now. That'd be amazing. But all of their rum comes through Sheer. So that's the only way we can, if we want that component, we have to buy it through them. So Sheer blend it in-house for them. But the next step of this, and sort of what I alluded to earlier, now we have these individual components. Now we have the individual rums. We are laying down our own casks of these components. We are experimenting with that here. Unfortunately, we don't have any warehouses in the Caribbean. If we did, we could ship them back there and age them there. Currently, we have warehouses in Scotland, and that's where we're aging these barrels. So again, when we do those blends, we'll be able to tell you, okay, this had 5 years aged in Barbados. It might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in Scotland, whatever it is, and it will give us more ingredients to play with. So I think there will come a time for sure where we'll be able to really be hands-on with the blending here, and certainly that's where I'd love to take it over the next few years. If everyone likes the rum and keeps wanting the rum, and we'll keep expanding the range, then we'll do that. But yeah, that's the dream, to have access to all of those rums and all those components and be able to create your own perfect blend.
And any more questions, Billy?
There's a couple which I'll answer later on online for the guys on Facebook, but I think hand over to you guys now. You
sure? We can take another couple if you want. Looking at time.
Oh, I did forget actually on the blending question. We are actually doing one of our own blends. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it yet, which is why I didn't bring it up. But I'll tell you anyway because. So we've this year, if you didn't know, is the 50th anniversary of Black Tot Day. Black Tot Day, if you don't know, Black Tot. The Navy gave out a rum ration for 239 years. And then in 1970, they said, this is ridiculous. We have nuclear submarines now. Let's stop getting all our crews drunk every day. And they killed off the rum ration. So 31st of July, 1970, they called it Black Tot Day because it was literally like a funeral for the rum. And this year is the 50th anniversary of it. So our plan was to come and visit all of you in each country and bring you all these delicious rums and do these tastings with you. It may very well be the case because of the situation right now around the world that we will be doing these tastings online. So look out for more and more different tasting packs. So we're going to be bottling some really cool stuff soon. But yeah, this year being the 50th anniversary, obviously we thought it would be appropriate to bring out a rum that honored the 50th anniversary. And it's kind of hard for us in a way to come up with a new blend because we've got Navy rum. Like we can't recreate it. Anything we do would be a cheap imitation. So we have to come up with a new idea and a new blend. And I was talking to again Ollie Chilton, our head blender, and we were sort of like having a bit of a discussion about what would be the what would be the dream rums that you would put into a blend? Like what islands, what countries, if you were going to do this Navy style idea and go to those 4 homes, Trinidad, Guyana, Barbados, Jamaica, what would be the dream rums you would pick from those countries and put them in a blend? You could do anything. And so that's what we've made. So coming very soon, we're gonna be releasing this blend for the 50th anniversary. For me, it's one of the geekiest, most ridiculous, amazing rum blends you've ever seen. And on the back, just like I showed you earlier with Finest Caribbean with the breakdown, we're going to share with you exactly what we put in there, from which island, which country, which still, distilleries that are closed down and lost, you know, stills that may have been potentially rebuilt several times over, you know, the Theseus ships of stills. They're pretty, it's a very geeky rum blend, but I think it's going to be delicious. I think you're liking. So that is going to be something that we are putting together and making for you all. So.
Amazing. I think that's an awesome note to finish on, Mitch. And, you know, thank you very much. Can you tell the guys, you guys are on Facebook and Instagram as Black Tot. So if you want to sort of follow what the guys are doing, especially because Mitch will be doing a lot more of these tastings with these packs over the next couple of coming months, please follow them and you can get more information, especially if you haven't had your pack today or you're interested in getting a pack. We still have them online. And then Mitch will email you with details when he's doing another tasting of the component parts. So any last words that you want to say, Mitch?
I guess just to say, we're doing what we can here, I guess, to try and put on some entertaining things for you and try and give you a little something to look forward to whilst we're all sort of stuck and not able to travel and staying at home. And to give you an idea, a couple of things we're doing. So this weekend, we're going to be doing a gig with St. Leonard. If you follow him on Instagram, St. Leonard, he's doing a gig online with Clash Magazine. We're sending out 50 little minis of Black Tot Rum, so you can have a drink with the gig and watch that. So go and follow him and you can find out how to do it, and it'll be on our pages as well. In a couple of weeks' time, should I say that? Yeah, we should say this. In a couple of weeks' time, I'm very excited because Matt Petrick, who I mentioned earlier, has agreed to be the first guest. We're going to start doing a Black Tot Rum Club. So in 2 weeks' time, so 2 Thursdays from now, we'll be doing a weekly session with some rum heroes in the world that I really look up to and mentors. And rather than me speaking, it'll be me sort of asking them all the questions like Dawn has today. So yeah, 2 weeks' time, Matt Petrick on Black Tot Rum Club. We've said it now, so we have to make it happen. Let's do it.
No, thank you so much, Mitch. And you know, it's really interesting hearing you talk about Black Tot, and we're superbly excited to have you on the team here. So thank you so much, and good luck over the next couple of weeks. For all the rest of you, we've got a couple more tastings coming up rum-wise. So we've got the amazing Zan from Worthy Park next week, being interviewed by Ian, who we've already mentioned. And also this weekend, if you're interested, we've got our cognac show, which sadly we cannot do physically, but we're bringing it online. So just keep an eye out for what we're doing. We're trying to do a whole load of tastings. May will be a focus on world whiskey. But yeah, you'll get to see our very smiley faces over the next coming months doing a whole host of tastings. So thank you so much for joining us. We've really enjoyed it. I am now going to finish the Black Tots I have in front of me, and then I'm going to have a daiquiri. But thank you so much, guys. Have a lovely night. Ciao.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.